Good morning or afternoon, wherever, or evening, wherever you may be. It's Friday morning here in Boston. As good as Friday is a cup of coffee. And even better than that is coffee talk, an international coffee talk, an international virtual coffee talk with awardees of the International Women of Courage Award. So welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Yntema, and I'm just delighted to be here on behalf of WorldBoston, facilitating this wonderful conversation with our two awardees. So let me just quickly mention that the mission of WorldBoston is to foster international engagement and global cooperation. So we're thrilled and honored to be able to join in this program. I want to give you a little background on this very prestigious award and then tell you about what we're going to do in our coffee talk. And I do hope you have your coffee or other good beverage nearby. So this award is the Secretary of State's International Women of Courage Award, and sometimes you'll hear us talk about MAWOCC. It was established in 2007 and honors women around the world who have demonstrated exceptional courage and leadership in advocating for human rights and the advancement of women and girls, reaffirming the commitment of the United States to gender equity and equality. It was inaugurated in 2007, as I said, and since then, this award has honored more than 170 women from over 80 different countries. We're all here today because of the work of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, which is leading a program, International Visitors Leadership Program, with the participation of awardees. Of course, we're doing this virtually, but this means that awardees are virtually visiting different cities around the US, and we're so honored to be working on that with them, as WorldBoston does throughout the year. We are the local implementer of the IVLP, or the International Visitors Leadership Program. So to let you know about what is going on today, we're looking backwards to March 4th, when our awardees received their award, which was hosted by the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, with special guest, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. And now today, we're having a discussion with our wonderful collaborators, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, which I'd like to point out was founded in 1920. And fast forward to our other wonderful collaborator today, the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, which was founded almost a century later in 2015. So I just think that's pretty cool that we have that span of time. So looking at what we're going to do today, we will have about 10 minutes of discussion with our first speaker, Bhumika Shrestha of Nepal, which will be moderated by Pattye Comfort of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Then we'll have some Q&A with our first speaker. Then we'll move on to our next speaker, Roegchanda, I hope I have that correct, Pascoe of South Africa. She'll be introduced by Celia Johnston Blue, President and CEO, visionary and founding member of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. So, and then we'll also have Q&A after that section. And then we'll wrap up at about 10 a.m. Or in fact, at 10 a.m. So I think that's all I've got to say up front, except thank you once again to everybody involved, and most of all, to the inspiring awardees who are able to join us today.
As we get started on this presentation, I welcome all of the attendees to choose your language channel that you'd like to listen in on. And in order to do that, it's in the lower right-hand corner where the globe says interpretation. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here. My name is Pattye Comfort, and I am the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. Thank you, Mary, for that kind introduction. I want to thank Mary and Sarah and all the rest of the staff at WorldBoston for inviting us to partner with you today. And I also want to thank Celia Blue from the Mass Women of Color Coalition for joining us and being our partner in this today. What a privilege it is to be here with all of you this morning, and especially to be with the fierce and brilliant recipients of the U.S. Secretary of State's International Women of Courage Award for 2022, Bhumika Shrestha and Roegchanda Pascoe. It's a pleasure to meet you both. As some people may know, the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts, as Mary mentioned, was founded in 1920. We have a 102-year history of fighting for equal rights for women over these last 100 or so years, which began with the fight for women's suffrage, culminating in 1920 with the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, granting women the right to vote. We also led the fight for women to serve on a jury here in Massachusetts after a nearly 30-year battle, and that law was passed in 1950. Before that, women were not allowed to serve on a jury. The League was at the forefront of the Equal Rights Amendment movement of the 1970s and 80s. That movement actually began in the 1920s, but sort of picked up steam in the 70s and 80s, and the League was leading the way on that. And we have also been a leader in protecting reproductive rights, a battle which unfortunately we are still fighting. So I am grateful beyond measure to the women whose shoulders that we have stood on here in Massachusetts and here in our own country, United States, and also here in our own state of Massachusetts. And I am humbled by the remarkable achievements of the women we are honoring today. These are brave and bold women who have risked everything to empower the disenfranchised in their respective countries. And this morning, I have the honor and the privilege of introducing one of these bold and brave women, a recipient of the U.S. Secretary of State's International Women of Courage Award for 2022, Bhumika Shrestha. Ms. Shrestha has been an advocate for gender minorities' rights and social justice in Nepal since 2007. Despite the entrenched social stigma and historical biases against transgender persons, Ms. Shrestha helped lead the movement for gender minority recognition as Nepal faced enormous political upheaval and rebirth. Thanks in large part to her activism, in 2007, Nepal's Supreme Court ruled that individuals could be identified as a third gender on citizenship documents. And in the spring of 2021, she successfully changed her citizenship from other to female. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Ms. Shrestha advocated with the government of Nepal to ensure the needs of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex community were met at the policy level. And she also at the same time worked at the grassroots level to ensure that their medical, economic, and mental health needs were being met. Please join me in congratulating and welcoming Bhumika Shrestha. Bhumika?
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. I wish to greet everybody one more time. My name is Bhumika Shrestha. I'm so pleased today to be able to join you. I feel very honored to be in your presence. The fact that you have shed light and given me a chance to talk about our work regarding the rights of LGBTA community in my country. This is a special privilege. I shall be talking about some of the struggles that we faced on our en route to this day. I'm associated with an organization called the Blue Diamond Society, and this organization fights for the rights of LGBT community across Nepal.
When you're talking about gender identity, there is a traditional notion of notions do exist in our communities. I was born as a son, but because of my interest in my natural way, I felt like a woman, and therefore, when I was walking on the streets or working in the various fields, that's what I represented myself. So in that sense, I also went through a lot of mental torture or difficulties. I was not able to express my feelings openly and freely. And those people who thought about me in a very negative way, they were impacted me. But now when I think of those past things, now I feel happy about it, because in the past, those discrimination I faced in the past, because of all those things, I became courageous. I draw motivation and inspiration from those, and then I started to do things that I wanted to do, and I feel very happy about it. Now, in Nepal's context, our gender and sexual minorities, there are a lot of good things about it, but still all of the rights that we need to have are still not there, not sufficient. In the past, as I said earlier, myself included, all the minorities, in my case, those were expelled from schools, in societies, and walking on the streets. You had to face a lot of discriminations. We had to face a lot of tortures, physically and mentally, which I became also mentally suffered. So in the Nepali society is such that it is men-dominated society or thinking, where all of our gender and sexual related identities are not discussed. The time I joined my organizations, we wanted to move forward with our campaign. So we connected with women organizations. We raised our voice. We presented our agendas and asked how they could help us. In some programs, some women leaders have given me suggestions and counseling that they express their experience also in Nepal. In this century, we had to fight for over 30 years to gain our women's rights. In Nepal's constitution, the rights of the gender and sexual minorities have been secured in the clause 12 of the constitution. The citizenship rights and then social justice, and all of these things are mentioned in the Constitution. And in 2008, our society, the Blue Diamond Society, was established. And in the course of this process, we have achieved many of the things that we wanted, which, during the time of introducing me, the madam had mentioned a lot of the things. For example, the Supreme Court made a decision to grant our identity. Slowly, we move forward. The society began to change. And what we wanted to do was the citizenship based on our gender identity. And in addition to that, related to social stigmas, other cultural rights, political rights, and economic rights, we are still behind in those areas. Our general election is coming up in Nepal, and we are having consultation with various political parties to have the representation of and rights of the gender and sexual minorities during those elections. Those should not be forbidden, or their rights should not be taken away. The voting rights should not be taken away. We are campaigning for those. All of those gender identities should be allowed to. In the past, we were not allowed to vote in the past, but today, even the election commission today, the election commission of Nepal, we had a conversation with them, and finally, they have issued a notice indicating that not just the male and the female, but also the gender and sexual minorities must also be included, and the ballot should be prepared similarly or accordingly. When talking about the political rights, we have very minimal rights at the moment because our policies and the laws have not been changed. And therefore, we are still behind in many of those things. But I do hope that in future, my community that is fighting for our rights will for bringing changes in the societies. I'm hoping that we'll gain all of the things that we want to. When we talk about the Constitution, Clause 42, which is about the social justice, that is giving us opportunities to continue with our social work, social activism, and I think that's being helpful. But in the context of Nepal, but the resources, lack of resources, the implementation process is very weak, and therefore we are not getting all the things that we wanted to do in terms of our rights. So with regard to the citizenship and also the marriage equality, we're still working on those. But the society is changing, even though not a lot of things are happening the way we want, but a lot of the things are, good things are happening. We have been able to express freely, put forward our agenda. But now, the honor that I have received from the State Department of the United States has given me further encouragement and responsibilities. And with that one, now, when we're talking about the rights today in our societies, we're only talking about the rights of the men and women. But our fight is really to the gender identity and the sexual identity. These are the things, and these are the things that I have realized. And then when I received this honor, the Prime Minister of Nepal also congratulated me. Now I'm in the state of Karnali, the province of Karnali. I'm here. One good thing I wanted to mention is that while I was coming here, I got a phone. There is a Teachers Association in Nepal, and there is a program happening of the Teachers Association in Nepal, where former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli is going to inaugurate it. And they are going to honor me in that program. And so because of my receiving this international award as a courageous woman, I am here because of my official work, but the political leaders of Nepal have always defined our issues as a technical problem. But when we're talking about the political and cultural rights, when they were, going against parties, each other, they were using us. But today, it is not the case. But the right should not be given. That was the mentality during those times. But today, as things have changed, and the leaders and the families have changed. As I mentioned earlier about the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister, they have called me for an honor, to receive an honor. And in Nepal, it's a female-dominated society has been difficult, but when we're talking about the gender and the sexual identities, the issues have been moved forward, and this is a good thing. And myself included, and my all other friends, they feel proud about what is happening, but we still have a long way to go. There are a lot of challenges to be faced. But this award has created a role in a way in terms of formulating policies and the laws. Now our voices will be included or incorporated in those policies and the laws. And this is what I believe in. I think that my time is up. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about it, about my issues. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste, Bhumika. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I was just told that we have about 1 minute left in our section. But yes, someone just wrote in the chat, congratulations, you are such an inspiration. And I just want to echo that, because I'm filling up with tears listening to you talk. So it's been very moving for me. I thought I would just ask one question. You mentioned marriage equality in Nepal, and I'm sure you know that was a very long struggle here in the United States. Is that something that's at the top of your agenda for a next issue? Or I was just wondering how you think about that.
And this is a very significant and relevant question. The right to marriage equality, we have been raising our voice to receive this right in our country. In 2007, December 21st, the Nepali Supreme Court issued an order to the government saying that the Supreme Court ordered the government to look into all the legal changes that needed to be made in order to establish marital marriage equality. The committee was formed to look into the issue of marriage equality and the rights of the gender and sexual minority community to have equal rights in marriage. They issued a big report based on their study. The government of Nepal now is using that report as the basis to move forward with implementing some of the laws and changing laws. However, the paperwork is still in process. The government has formed different committees, different ministries are looking into it. We have been engaging with all of the ministries involved in making these changes in terms of how to bring about marriage equality. What the changes will entail, the government is deliberating on this, and we are engaged in that process. I really feel that the government will move in the right direction on this, yet we are in a watch and see, wait and see mode right now. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. That sounds relatively optimistic, so I'm glad about that. I just want to clarify that we actually have another 15 minutes for. I was wrong about the 2 minutes, so we have now another 15 minutes for questions. So I want to invite people in the audience to put questions in the chat for Bhumika, and I will field those questions. So please feel free to send us any of your questions. While I'm waiting for questions in the chat, I'll ask one myself, which is, Bhumika, you mentioned that Nepal has an election coming up. And as you were talking, I was wondering, is there a political party in Nepal that is a champion for gender rights?
एकदमै राम्रो प्रश्न धन्यवाद हजुरलाई
This is a great question. Thank you so much. You know, the situation of political parties in Nepal is a little bit different than perhaps we imagine.
विशेष गरी हाम्रो नेपालको राजनीतिक अधिकारको कुरा गर्नु पर्दाखेरि हाम्रो नेताहरूले अहिले केही हिसाबमा बुझ्नु भएको छ यो लैङ्गिक समानता
I think that speaking about political parties and our leaders in Nepal, I think they're coming around to understanding the needs and the rights of our gender minority and sexual minority communities, finally. You know, when elections roll around, they need us, they need our votes, and we get included in their manifestos up front. You know, so they write all kinds of very positive things that, that serves their interest to gather votes from our community. But, you know, they use language that is insulting to our community. You know, it's become almost a political metaphor to call the other party a very feminine party or a, party with no masculinity. And this kind of political language between them indicates to us that they're really not that sensitive to our community and our rights. I'm affiliated with a political party in Nepal. They welcomed me. They gave me the opportunity to be active. And I attended their general party convention, and I won a seat in the general convention. Nepal now has a two-tier election system, a proportional and a direct election. And I showed interest in being nominated or in the list in the proportional seat. And they did propose my name for the proportional seat to be a member of parliament. And I got a call from the party saying, hey, Bhumika, congratulations. We have included your name in the closed list of people nominated to be a member of parliament through the proportional seat. And they asked me to come and submit my citizenship papers just to make this official. But when I actually did arrive there with my citizenship, there was a problem, because my citizenship contains a picture of me wearing a traditional Nepali male hat, because that was the gender I was registered as in my citizenship. So when they saw that, and then they saw the fact that I'm a third gender female, they said, well, there's a mismatch here. Your citizenship shows that you are one gender, but you are another gender. So we can't really move forward with this. So now we're putting the issue before political parties and political leaders that there are not just males and females in Nepal. There are people like me who are third gender, and you need to accommodate us and our rights. So this is preventing us from achieving high political office. Yeah, so this is going to become an issue going into the future as well. I was happy to join the political party, the political movement. I felt that I could do something for our community using the political platform. But once I got in, there were many factors working against me inside the the mainstream political parties. I was the only transgender person in that assembly of Nepali political party convention. And so, people raised a lot of questions about the attention that I was receiving, the attention that our cause was receiving, was saying, so many people have struggled for so long. Why is Bhumika being given so much attention? This doesn't upset me. I understand that this is a struggle. This is a long-term struggle. I'm able to identify with women of all very diverse backgrounds. I look forward to representing them. And these kinds of challenges give me, the energy to fight for our rights into the future.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. We do have a couple questions in the chat, so or in the Q&A area, so I'm just going to read them. So the question is from Marguerite Chatelier. What role do you see religion playing in gender equality, Hinduism, Muslim, Buddhism, and Christianity?
I think that the religion and culture is really about individual understanding, whether it's a Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, and I do feel that the God is one and the same. in our country, in our society in Nepal, none of the religion doesn't discriminate. That's what I think. When you're talking about religion in Nepal, most people think that it's a Hindu country. Yes, it is mostly a Hindu country, but it is a secular state now. In many places, it is more about people who look at us in a very negative way, not the religion. For example, the Ved, Puran, Quran in Muslim, in Christian Bible, and Buddhist, they have their own values. So far, me, myself, and my members in our community in Hinduism or about the Buddha religion, I don't feel that there is a discrimination. But in the context of Nepal, there is some difficulties. For example, in Christian religion also that exists. I don't know what is written in the Bible, but it is, a lot of people think that it is not natural, therefore we must not allow to move forward with this notion. But today, in terms of religion, there isn't much discrimination, but there are people who do not like us or get angry at us. These kind of things I do hear once in a while. But I do think that when the God created everyone, they created all of us in a very equal way. But I think this discrimination will gradually or slowly be eliminated.
Thank you. Another question from Fasia Harris. How are your politics challenged by cultural and traditional norms?
अहिले हाम्रो समाजमा
in our societies today, when we talk about all issues, for example, women, those who are backward communities, other gender communities, sexual communities, and about the rights of these communities. In many places, when it comes to the political and religious rights, a lot of communities are connected to each other. For example, when the political parties advocate for secularism, but there are also some others who don't. And some say that Nepal must be reinstated as a Hindu state. Some others will say, we'll talk about their political status. So there are different opinions regarding this. So there is a problem too. But all of our desire is that all sexual and gender minorities, all of them have their religion, and we must be allowed to practice or have our rights in all cases. But now, sometimes political obstacles out there saying that this religion or that religion, in our case, in terms of numbers, how do we do about it? But now, most people think that the religious beliefs must be the rights of all in a political process. Even the preachers and all teachers advocate for this. Earlier on, our community was looked upon in a very different way today. But we are having a lot of programs with various religious leaders. I do not exactly know what happens in all of the religions, but we do have orientation classes and other conversation with the people who are related to this. So those who are related to political parties, how do we connect the religion to politics? That conversation is happening. That's all I wanted to show at this time.
Great, thank you, Bhumika. What is your advice to give hope to young people who are transgendered as they navigate the challenges of life these days?
Well, एकदमै गहन प्रश्न हजुरलाई एकदमै
Very
धन्यवाद।
important question. Thank you so much. Today in Nepal, at the time when I was in my community, when I was expelled from school, as a result, I could not continue my education. So those who were providing me education discriminated me. And therefore, until now, I have not been able to advance my education. By the time when I faced those challenges, today those challenges are less. Because today in schools and families, we have been doing a lot of consultations and a lot of other programs to educate and raise awareness. So people are coming in a very open way today. So for our own identity and our rights, we must always fight. We must not keep quiet. We cannot get our rights if we stay quiet. And therefore, we must start from ourselves. So we have to understand this, and we have to educate our societies, families. There is a saying in Nepali, we have to lose something to gain something. And that's what's happening. So today, for our youth transgender folks, I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying that you have to lose something to gain something. I'm just encouraging them to be who they are, and then and a lot of them do look at me in a very respectful way, and they learn from us, they experience from us, they gain experience from us, so they are moving forward with us. So when there is a problem, I always say that I am with them. And that's all I wanted to say right now.
Well, I think we're at the end of our time. I'm sure that the young people in Nepal are thrilled that you're with them, because you are an inspiration to all of us, and I'm sure to all of the young people who are following in your, great footsteps and amazing capacity to lead. So, Bhumika, thank you so much for all that you've done and for being with us here today. It's been a great honor and privilege to talk with you and to hear the work that you've been doing. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Mary to continue the program. Thank you, Bhumika.
Thank you so much, Bhumika, and Patty also for your collaboration. And I'm just going to move right along. We now have our next feature with an awardee with Roegchanda Pascoe, who goes by Roo. And she is going to be introduced by our collaborator, Celia Johnston Blue of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. So please go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Mary. Good morning, everyone. It is truly an honor to be a part of this exciting and inspiring program. I too also want to congratulate Bhumika and Roegchanda for winning this prestigious award, and to your other colleagues for being recognized around the world by being honored with this prestigious award. As Mary mentioned, my name is Celia Johnston Blue. I'm the president and CEO and visionary and founding member of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition that we fondly call MAWOCC. I want to thank Mary, Sarah, and all of the members of the WorldBoston team and my collaborator, Pattye, for inviting us to be at this table with you all today. Historically in this country, women of color voices are not often heard, and we still struggle in this movement today. MAWOCC was formed in 2015 to really focus on us and our women of color and our communities of color. And it truly is an honor to be invited by Pattye and WorldBoston to be a part of this just amazing program today. In 2015, I worked with 12 women of color from across Massachusetts and led the development and public launch of MAWOCC. In my current role, I am leading the organization to realize our vision and mission, overseeing the day-to-day operations, and strongly advocating for the voices of women of color to be heard, to address the inequities that we face on a daily basis, which also impacts our communities of color. To share a little bit about MAWOCC, our vision is that we envision a commonwealth of authentic inclusion where racism and sexism no longer dictates the outcomes of women of color in our communities. Our mission is dedicated to eradicating the racial inequities amongst women of color created by structural, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized racism. We will address this by looking at working through different areas, and there's 5 areas in which we're focused on: political and civic leadership, education justice, economic power and sustainability, criminal justice, and health and wellness. We truly believe that our success will maximize the benefits and contributions for all aggrieved communities of color in the Commonwealth as a whole. We are a statewide organization, and we are aiming one day to be global. So Rue and Bhumika, I might be calling you one day. We are non-industry specific and intergenerational, starting with high school girls of color in the 9th grade. Who are we? We identify as women of color, Black or African descent, Latina, or Hispanic, Latinx, Asian, Middle Eastern, Native American, or of indigenous descent. We recognize and celebrate the intersection of social identities in our work, including but not limited to race, class, gender, and sexuality. Our framework challenges ethnic anti-Black racism and heterosexism, which disproportionately affects Black and Latina women. So we start off by focusing on Black and Latina women. To find out more about us, you can visit us at mawocc.com, and thank you again for allowing me to share a little bit about the work, me and the work that our organization is doing. Now it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce to you Roegchanda Pascoe, fondly known as Rue. In South Africa, a country grappling with high rates of organized crime, gender-based violence, and murder, Rue has courageously advocated for peace, justice, and economic inclusion in the historical, underserved, and violent Cape Flats of Cape Town. In 2013, Rue is a founding member of the Menimberg Safety Forum, in which she became chairwoman. Despite multiple attempts on her life and continued threats from violent criminals, Rue continues to create safe communities, especially for women and children who have been traumatized by violence, and to train the next generation of community advocates. She has called on the President of South Africa, local government, and police to increase crime prevention, intervention, and fight corruption. And she has bravely convened gang leaders and community members for conflict mediation. For conflict mediation. Without further ado, it gives me great honor and privilege to introduce you to Roegchanda Pascoe.
Okay, it's afternoon here on my side. Good morning. um, yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor to be present here, but also to be recognized for the Woman of Courage Award yet again. You know, I cannot say thank you enough. I know a lot of people, especially here at home, say, embrace, it's your moment. When you are so used to giving, you know, when it comes to the receiving side of things, it's very hard to receive. And yeah, that is just me. So I'm Roegchanda Pascoe. I'm an activist on the Cape Flats, been here in civic movements and so on. But in 2009, I think that is when my journey with the Menenberg Safety Forum has started. 2009, a young boy was shot in his spine while I was doing a housing survey in Menenberg, a community on the Cape Flats, and that turned my life around. It was the first time after many years I've been working at home in my community again, and I heard people spoke, but I never knew that it was so bad until that day. And when this little boy of the shock ran home, his parents were both at work. There was nobody home to see to his injury that he have acquired. And I just went ballistic that day. I think from that day onward, I never looked back. I said, we must, as a community, we must take a stand. And people were literally afraid. People didn't want to really move. And I then built a network of movements outside of Menenberg. I said, if nobody inside is going to help, I will go to the extent of outside, and connected with a lot of movements. The right to know, democracy from below, government entities, departments, social development, Institute of Security Studies, all of them, I've just engaged them and say, we need to break this down. And the reason why I literally went that way, although South Africa is a country that have democracy, for us women and people of color in South Africa, that is just a distant dream still. If you speak about democracy and human rights. So we as the people of color are still violated. Our human rights are constantly violated. And the sad part of it all is a lot of people do not want to speak out
Someone is speaking on the English channel.
So what we are doing now is practically what I started to do is raise the...
Can interpreter please switch to a different channel? Interpreter switch to a different channel. Thank you. Please continue.
What me as an activist started to do was raising the topics that people were avoiding to speak about. And that is the indifference of service delivery in communities like Menenberg compared to the affluent areas where you could say your middle class families lived. it totally came at a cost in 2013 when the struggle really heightened. The first hit was taken out on me, and they shot my daughter a day I will never forget, on the 23rd of December that year, in mistaking her for me. And funny enough, some people would run away and go in hiding for their children. I saw to it that my children were safe, and I went into the gang that has taken out the hit on me. I went to their premises and I went to engage them, because the one thing that I knew the gangs were going to do, because of the shooter that failed in killing me, he will then be punished by the gang. And so I wanted to intervene and wanted to see who the young man was, and said, enough, he could have been my son. And I then gave him a lifeline. Never expected my daughter to accept my decision that I made to give him a lifeline away from the gang, but also out of the community for his safekeeping. And today I can say he's living a life, have a family of his own, and turned his life around. That has also taught me that there is hope for our young men and women in our communities. Though they are written off by our government, we shouldn't write them off. And that is where I started to exercise my right as a citizen, engaging government, take them to task, our Minister of Police. I really went in there with the whole of me. When I started the mediation with the gangs, they said I'm a terrorist. We don't engage gang leaders. And my view was, this gang leaders is our children, it's part of our families, and therefore we should engage them, and we must stand still and ask them why. And it took some time for police to really accept the fact that this is going to happen, and it really brought gang violence, I think, for up to 5 years. We didn't experience any gang violence. There was a relationship built. The gang leaders themselves, when they couldn't find a solution to their problems, they would contact me or my colleague, and they would ask us to come and intervene and find a solution to their problems. So then I took the Management Safety Forum on another level, because why? I believe all the symptoms as a people, and especially people of color, we are feeling today is of the underlying pain, hardships that was experienced in the past, but with the new dispensation that came 1994 to South Africa, everybody was hyped up about the new government, apartheid has fallen, and they never looked back on the trauma and the pain people have experienced, but especially so our women. Our women are the glue of our communities. I have this documentary that I created, and I said, I call it Whispers, Whispers of the Womb, and that is the mothers of the nation, but the mothers of South Africa specifically lost their children. And up till now, women of color does not get, even in our health service, the privilege of, when they have post-traumatic stress or antenatal traumatic stress, there is no counselor looking at it. If they have a miscarriage, they must just go home and get over it. And it's a traumatic experience for all women. And so this is the kind of things I started to engage with the Department of Health. I keep the Human Rights Commission accountable. Another thing is especially our police safety and security. That does not, it in fact have put me in a space of being more in danger. on both sides, state and gangs. It never hindered me from really doing, but I'm also, you know, there's a saying, we must walk the talk. So I don't want to talk and then do not walk. Everybody was saying, yes, the people in communities like ours are accepting the situation there and so on. And therefore they never testify in court. They always turn a blind eye to the crime and violence happening there. And that is where I decided to testify after I've witnessed in 2016 an assault that resulted in murder. And in broad daylight when everybody saw, but nobody wanted to speak. That resulted in me and my family paying the biggest price. The night before I had to testify, I was already taken into safety. My partnership with the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. We have established a safety rule because our state say they do not intervene until the act has happened. And so there was no safety net put in place before I testified. And the only safety they give is transporting myself as a witness to court and from court back home. In between that, I have to see to my own safety. And therefore, I've reached out to the Global Initiative to say, this is what's going to happen. I know this is how the gangs operate, especially a woman. When a woman speaks out, they do not take that kindly. And then all witnesses thus far at most has been murdered in South Africa when taking a stand against crime. The night before I had to testify, I got a letter, a small piece of letter, and it was a gang member that just passed me by and put it in my hand. And when I opened my hand up, it said, "You're going to die today." And that was warning me, tipping me off that it's going to happen today. I asked the children, "Are you leaving with me?" They said, "No, mommy, they are after you, not after us." As any mother, I felt uneasy. I knew how the gangs operate, but my children were adamant. I left 10 to 12, my phone rang, and all I could hear was my grandson screaming, "Ma, they're going to kill us," and the bullets ringing out. So in fact, by that incident, my whole family had to die. Again, I'm Muslim, but I'm spiritual, not so much religious, but spiritual. And God saved and kept my children safe. Not one bullet touched them. Everything in the house was broken. Everything was full of holes, but they came out with their lives. And my neighbor upstairs, on top of me, took them in. First of all, the police didn't pick up their phone, and our civic police also left them no trauma support, none of the sort. And the youngest granddaughter of mine was 4 months. So a lot of my personal experience growing up in the community, then raising my children, have really developed my stance that I have taken, not literally just against the gangs, but also against a system that has created for gangs to grow, develop, and strengthen, and a government that is ignoring, in fact, the harsh realities of the people on the ground. And that for me is the most important part of my work, is that our people do not understand they have a right to exercise their right and demand their right at every cost they have, all the power in their hands, because there's one saying in our constitution is that the people shall govern. So MAWOCC, I love your name and I love what you stand for.
Thank you so much, Rue. We are now in the question that was great, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I think hearing the details, and as I was doing a bit of research about you and really discovering that you've been in safety protection now since that happened, I did not realize that. And so, you know, what a complete upheaval of your family and what you've had to deal with, but you're still doing the work and fighting for the cause, and really getting at the hard parts about transforming change, because you're talking systems, and systems spent years in the making, but to really understand that in a way that, you know, gives hope to others so that they don't get discouraged. You know, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. And so we have to keep moving on each day. So I thank you for such inspiration and for the work that you're doing for all of us. So I'm going to move into our Q&A session. And I'll start off with a question. I don't see a question just yet. But, you know, you talked about, you know, if you could share a little bit with us on how you've been able to create that vision when most people, all they've known is violence. How are you able to create that vision for folks to have hope and want to do the right thing?
In 2017, we had the youngest, I think the first youngest murder of a 3-year-old. And, you know, a 3-year-old girl was murdered in a home, and it was sad for 40 days. We searched for her just to find out, in fact, she was murdered in a home, and her body was kept there until it became too tight for the perpetrator, and then he went to dump the body. So, but even then, our people were afraid to exercise. So one thing I did, our president was at that moment in Cape Town. And I then challenged the president to come down to the people's level, to come into that community. And the one thing I did when the president arrived, I said, oh, good and well, I don't want your condolences, because this could have been prevented. But this is an abused woman. She has never had a home of her own. She had to raise and live on the goodness of others. But even in this house, her right has been taken off so many times that she has accepted that is her fate, and that will be her children's fate. So you must prove to me that you really care as a president. We leave your title as a president. You are father first, and you are grandfather. This woman needs a home of your own, her own. Can you give it to her? She's living in that house today. And she was moved out of the house where her child was murdered. And that was one point that stuck by people to say, many have died, but everybody have not demanded that right to have a home of their own, to be moved away from the space that they had endured or encountered that awful time in their life. I think the other thing for me was keeping our Minister of Police accountable, because why in that specific case, no dogs, no sniffer dogs were used. The detectives were lazy, didn't do their work, until a colleague of mine came to fetch me, and I blew it up, and I kept the station commander accountable. And only then people realized their right to know. They can ask, the investigating officers should work with them. It took fire within a split second. Today I can say I've done my bit in educating and developing our people in a way to exercise their right. They know now to go to a police station and keep an investigating officer accountable, but also request their right to go and see if they have family members in the holding cells. Are they treated humanely? Do they get what they should get? So that is the form of education and advocacy I do, not only with our government officials and departments, but also our people on the ground, so that they can know, if I'm not there one day, they would know how to exercise their rights and how to keep the powers and be accountable, but also take responsibility of that right that they have.
Can you talk a little bit about when you formed the safety forum with the other community members?
Yes, we were only 5 people initially starting the Manenberg Safety Forum. I know at that time I was working a lot out of Cape Town, moving in and out, giving training. I was working for Right to Know. And so my one colleague called me, he said, listen, Manenberg is under fire. Police is doing nothing. Everybody's turning a blind eye. We need your voice. Now, I don't like using a mic because I have a very strong house voice. And I said, you can use, I in fact joked with him. I said, you can use a loud hailer and call the people together. And he said, no, the people listen to you. So the first initial, before we named it the Manenberg Safety Forum, we call the movement Taking Back Our Streets. And I said, it's no use organizing and mobilizing the government officials and attacking them. If our people are not all on one page, we are fighting a battle that we will never win because we are not speaking the same language. So the first initial transformation, 6 people, myself, Glenda, Suleiman, Errol, he's now passed on, Francis, and another pastor, and I was the speaker on the Bakkie, and a loud hailer on a Sunday. No resources, no money. We went in there and we organized the people. I can tell you, you know, it's fond memories to look back because while the police couldn't get it right, we were a few people and we managed to have 3,000 people on the streets marching to the police station to demand that the police come into the community and do their work. And from there, a relationship started with the people and police. It's not 100% there as it should be, but there is a relationship where people are actively involved in what is happening regarding crime and violence in the community. If they do not trust, even while I'm in safety, they still send the messages to me, they still send the info to me, and I still have my safe line of forwarding that messages and information to the correct people so that they can intervene.
That's great. Thank you for that. I have a few more questions, and let me just check to see if we have anything in the chat. Doesn't look like we do. So what are some of the changes? So you talked about the police, and those are the changes there, and folks know that they can go and demand these things. And outside of that, what are some of the changes that the government has implemented or are working on to create a better community for Manenberg?
At this current state of time, you know, I must be honest, it's very sad. If you really want to know how sad, that's why I was very conflicted today. This morning, 6 o'clock, I received a message that a grade 8 learner was gang raped by 6 young men on the school. I think just straight after that, it was not long where a police constable assaulted a woman for coming to lay a charge against her ex-partner that assaulted her. Past 7, the next message came in. The school secretary was shot and killed in front of the school, in front of everybody and a grandchild. Now that is my everyday journey. People still scream, like I say, they still call, they still send messages. If there's police, police also call on my assistance when the system that they work in are not giving them what they want or the service they would love to give. And so, like I say, I keep everybody accountable and I protect where I need to protect. There is decent police officers that still do great service in our communities, that really wants the change that we also want. Our government, our president in itself is giving us lip therapy for the last 3 years on gender-based violence, because in South Africa, you know, a lot of us, we have started a movement, Action Unity, against gender-based violence and femicide. And it's because 3 years now, we have been experiencing a volume of deaths, women and children. And for 3 years, our president has been speaking, and nothing is implemented, nothing is enforced. You find where victims are still secondary victimized. Our VEP rooms, violence are not actively present. Social development budgets are cut. So we do not have social workers. As activists, myself and the networks that I work with broadly. So Menenberg Safety Forum has developed into a multi-sectorial organization, and we move as the Western Cape United Safety Front now, because it's broader than Menenberg. At this current moment, people from everywhere call on me, and I can do just so much. That's why I do a lot of live streams to reach everybody, because I'm limited with movement. So yeah, but that is where we at. We are going to the Constitutional Court, God sparing, in June. June 16 is a significant date on our calendar. And it's where youth rise up for this democracy that we are living in today. And we are saying, let's go back to Constitutional Hill. And because of the Constitutional Court and the Chief Justice is the last resort of giving us what we want, we are making, or we are doing a class action against the state, and not for money. What we are saying, our lives matter. Every woman and child's life matter here in South Africa. And if it's nothing for the powers that be, that every day we have murders, it is something that concerns us. And if you can't do the job, please remove yourself. I will be the next president of this country, but I believe it's by time as women we take our rightful places. Our government has proven to us that they do not in fact want women in the leadership. If women was, there was many women as deputy presidents. When it comes to the election time, they get removed and being put in another position, just so that they cannot lead. And so we are saying we're more than ready. So we're doing it both ways. We have a national election that's coming down 2023, and we have our class action that we are doing. So the sisters have started a political party, independent from the ground up, to strengthen our struggle and put us in the seats in Parliament, to exercise our right. and we are stopping at nothing. No matter the funding, you know, things are possible. If there's unity and there's love amongst each other, we can make things work. And we have wonderful people that come alongside and say, we help you. I just want to add to what you said. I also believe that we must create a global resistance as women to get our space back and let our voices be heard and amplify what we stand for.
Thank you, Rue. There was a question about, first question that came in was about, and I had this question myself too, about what do you do for self-care with all this work that you're doing and the traumas that you've endured? What do you do for self-care?
Just before I came online, a friend called me and asked me, how are you coping? So I have two. The Global Initiative helps with debriefing. And then I have my own team of healing workers. So I have this where I give healing to a lot of women out there on the Cape Flats from different communities. And there's different facilitators. So we do yoga, mental healing, and I have a project of my own, healing through art. So healing through art is music, painting, sculptures, writing poetry, just getting it out. So we have a yearly event where we exhibit what we've done over the year. By the end of the year, November month, then it's the 16 days of activism against crime and violence of women and children. And then victims that have overcome, we display their story. They tell their story to the world. So we create that platform for them to release. And that is where I have a debriefer. So Yasmina is my debriefer. I check with her on a weekly basis. And yeah, she does her techniques with me. We call it the shake and tapping. So you work everything out.
Great. It's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. When is the Cape Flats Women Alumni Program happening again? That was a question that came in.
That is in November. So that is in November. It is in parallel with the 16 days of activism. And that is where we honor our women. You know, we have women that are constantly on the front line at the cold face of all this drama that is happening, all this violence. And I believe, why should we wait until somebody dies to accolade somebody, to say we appreciate you? And that is where the Cape Flats alumni came from. Because I was a young person, and funny enough, always when a leader passes on, they ask me to do the memorial because I work with everybody. And it just stuck with me. And I said, I'm done with doing memorials. I want to celebrate my sisters while they are still here, so that they can know that I appreciate them. And that is where the alumni came about. So I forced the mayor to sign off the certificate and endorse the alumni, because a lot of these women, they do not have university degrees, nothing, but they're serving full heart and soul. And so the mayor must sign it off, and the Department of Social Development endorse, and we as the organization signed the certificate of acknowledgement of the work that they are doing. And then the Safety Forum gives them a memorabilia, a form of trophy. And we kept them. Like in the university, we kept them, and we give them a red carpet event. And then we partner with organizations. So what we do a profiling to say, this is the needs analysis for them, to empower them and skill them up with the service that they are rendering in the communities.
Okay, we're almost at time. We have a couple of questions, so let me just briefly, I know Mary sent a question earlier about needing to develop boys and young men. Considering the news you got today, what are the steps needed to develop boys and young men? And if you could maybe keep that really brief. And the last one is around how do we get involved?
So like I said to the leaders today, as much as we see the young men as perpetrators of heinous crimes, they are young, 15, 14 years old. They are also victims. We must remember that they have come through, the only language they know is violence, because that is the environment. And so I believe in a double point prong approach. We constantly want to save the child, but what we forget about the family unit. And the family unit needs to be healed before we can save and heal the child. And that is where we will get a ripple effect of change within the community. So holistically, I want to help the young boy, but I want to help the family at the same time. So your next question of how can we get involved? I have this project that I know it will work. And I call it the Place of Kratoa. And the name means nurturer carer. And she is one of our ancestral mothers that was enslaved, and when she claimed her identity back, she defined all of what the colonizers have given her. And the sadness was she committed suicide, and because of the pain, she couldn't bear the pain. Today we want to do restoration, and so I need a piece of land, and I need people to donate towards that piece of land. And we want to build it up with our own hands. We just want the land. We want to develop it so that for generations to come, they must know that that was our gift to them.
Right. Okay. All right. We're definitely past time. Thank you so much for your inspiration and for your courage and for your fight and being a warrior. I think that we're just so inspired by you, and I'm going to make sure I pronounce this right, with Bhumika earlier on as well. I want to leave with a quote by Andre Lord. I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own. With that, I'll turn it over to Mary. Thank you again.
Thank you so much to Celia and Patty, our wonderful collaborators and moderators. Great chance also to learn about their work, and enormous gratitude to our speakers, Bhumika Shrestha and Roegchanda Pascoe, for really sharing and uplifting all of us. I love the phrase to celebrate our sisters. So just a quick note, this is a great conversation, but it's not a one-off. Indeed, as we said, the award occurred on March 4th. The awardees have been speaking with many different communities, and they will actually have a closing when they all come back together virtually on May 18th. And then on May 24th, the program, April 18th, on May 24th, the program actually wraps up for good with a virtual celebration with the American Women for International Understanding in LA. So this is not a one-time thing. This is ongoing work and ongoing discussion. We at WorldBoston are so grateful to our colleagues at the State Department, ECA, and the IVLP program, and of course to our wonderful collaborators. So with that, I thank everyone for participating, and wish you all a very good rest of the day, wherever you may be.